अस्सलाम वालेकुम। प्रोग्राम एम्बेसी रोड में खुश आमदीद नाज़रीन। आज इस प्रोग्राम में हमारे मेहमान हैं पाकिस्तान में कनाडा के हाई कमिश्नर जनाब पैरी जॉन कार्डरवुड। उन्होंने हाल ही में अपनी इस पोजीशन पे काम शुरू किया है और हम उनसे इस्तफसार करेंगे पाकिस्तान और कनाडा के बाहमी ताल्लुकात के हवाले से। पाकिस्तान और कनाडा के दरमियान कई दहाइयों से सफारती ताल्लुकात मौजूद हैं। कनाडा पाकिस्तान की कई शोबों में मदद कर रहा है, तालीम में, सेहत में, मईशत में, तजारत में, और एक बड़ी तादाद में पाकिस्तानी कनाडा में मुकीम है, वो अपना किरदार अदा कर रहे हैं। हम उनसे पूछेंगे कि क्या वो उन पाकिस्तानियों के किरदार से मुतमईन हैं जो कि कनाडा में इस वक्त मुकीम है। यही वो सवालात हैं जो हम इनसे करेंगे। Thank you very much, High Commissioner, for joining us in this program.
Thank you for such a warm welcome. I'm delighted to be here.
Thank you very much. Pakistan and Canada have had diplomatic relations for decades. So, what are the big achievements of these relationships in the last few decades?
Well, let me say, as you've rightly stated, Canada and Pakistan have relations that date back to the earliest days of Pakistan's independence. We have a very warm and long-standing relationship, and a very rich one that covers a great diversity of areas. I look forward during the interview to discussing in detail a number of these areas, but I'll just highlight them in broad terms. Canada has had development cooperation programming in Pakistan since the 1950s in various sectors, and I think we've made a significant contribution working together with Pakistan in areas such as health and education and infrastructure. We have an economic relationship that is growing, trade and investment. Trade is reaching record levels. We have very important people-to-people ties between our two countries. We have a large community of Pakistani Canadians, or Canadians of Pakistani heritage, who are contributing to Canada and enriching our country. We have a growing number of Pakistani students in Canada. And Canada and Pakistan are both, of course, very active members of the United Nations. We're members of the Commonwealth as well. So in these and other international fora, we work together on many global issues of the day, such as peacekeeping as an example. We're both major contributors to peacekeeping operations. Combating climate change is another example, and many other areas. So as I said, it's a very rich and diverse relationship, and one that's growing very quickly in many areas.
High Commissioner, if we go back to 50s and 60s, Canada helped Pakistan setting up its first nuclear power plant in Karachi, Canop. And it's still in operation, still working. That's the first, I think, major contribution of Canada to Pakistan in producing electricity and using the nuclear power for peaceful purposes. Is that cooperation continuing?
Well, I would note that in addition, in the early days of our development programming, Canada played a significant role in helping Pakistan develop its hydroelectric capacity and building of dams. Canada is a very strong country in the energy sector, everything from oil and gas to nuclear power, hydroelectric and renewable energy. And it's an area where I think there's great scope for work between our two countries. At the present time, our development cooperation is not focused on the energy sector. Our priority and our focus evolves over time. At the present time, we're focused in 4 areas, and I'll say a little about each one. First is Canada is one of the largest contributors to the campaign in Pakistan and elsewhere to eradicate polio from the face of the earth. I'm very proud to say this because there's been tremendous progress in recent years. I commend the government of Pakistan and our partners like UNICEF and the World Health Organization, which are the channels through which Canada makes its contributions. We've achieved great progress. We've gone from a few hundred cases as recently as 2013 to, I think, just 2 new cases so far this year. So we're very polio from the country and from the world. There are only a couple of other countries where there still is a presence. So that's one area of focus. A second area is in education, with a particular emphasis on strengthening the quality of teaching at the primary level. We have an interesting arrangement in place for 8 years now. It's called the debt swap arrangement, whereby Pakistan, instead of paying back development loans to Canada, channels these funds, it's about $130 million Canadian, into programs to strengthen the training of teachers. And some 400,000 Pakistani teachers have benefited from this, and by extension, millions of Pakistani children and students have benefited. A third area of our cooperation is women's economic empowerment. You may be aware that Canada elected a new government about a year and a half ago, and our leader, Prime Minister Trudeau.
Very active, very dynamic leader, yes.
A dynamic leader, but I was going to say he named a cabinet characterized by gender parity. Yes. Half of our ministers are women and half are men, because our Prime Minister and our government has a very strong commitment to ensuring that women as well as men are full participants in the leadership of the country and all aspects of society. So in our foreign policy and our development policy, we seek ways to support other countries in their efforts to ensure that women have all the opportunities that men have to contribute to their countries. So in Pakistan specifically, we fund a number of projects aimed at developing the entrepreneurial skills, the business skills of women, yes, especially in rural areas, so that they can develop their own businesses and become successful business people. And the fourth area I was going to mention in terms of our development cooperation is in the area of strengthening governance. Canada provided support to reform of the Electoral Commission of Pakistan in the lead up to the 2013 elections. And we're currently exploring possible ways to provide support as Pakistan approaches elections again, probably in 2018,
yes,
to strengthen the capacity of the Electoral Commission to deliver free and fair and credible
When
elections.
it comes to cooperation in the field of education, what kind of actually aid or help you are extending to Pakistan? One is the training of teachers, but are you also helping Pakistan in building the infrastructure like schools and providing books to the students, or bringing more kids into the school?
Our main project with regard to education is the one that I described just now, this debt swap arrangement. For the most part, it's focused on training of teachers. However, we have also funded the building of facilities where teachers can go. And in fact, I visited one in Lahore a few months ago, a new facility that Canada financed, at which teachers from across Punjab province can go and stay there. They spend 3 or 4 weeks there on short-term training courses designed to strengthen their capacity.
It's a teachers training institute, kind of.
Yes, and well, what we funded specifically was a hostel accommodation, okay, so that the teachers have a place to stay during their training.
Right, but there are hundreds of thousands of children who are out of school in Pakistan, and this statistics is very often quoted, yes, both by Pakistani authorities as well as foreign experts. So is Canada ready to help Pakistan to bring these kids into schools? That's very important, because these people, these young kids, will remain deprived of education.
Well, I think it's a very important point that you make, and I do agree with you that I think it's a major challenge for Pakistan, the fact that there are significant numbers of children who are not in school. Obviously, ultimately, it's the job of the government of Pakistan and of the provinces of Pakistan to offer, to provide the
opportunities to go to school.
The opportunities to provide the facilities, the schools, and the teachers. There may also be a cultural element of reaching out to the parents and ensuring that the parents understand the importance of sending their children to school. As for Canada, we're certainly open to exploring new ways that we can be supportive of Pakistan in the education sector.
And providing basic infrastructure. I mean, there are areas where there are no schools, yes, so they need buildings, they need the infrastructure. So is that also a consideration by the Canadian government?
This is not something that we've been funding in recent years. As you can appreciate, I'm sure, in a country like Pakistan and many others, there are a lot of different development needs, and the way we operate is we have an ongoing dialogue with the government of Pakistan to identify the areas where we will focus our programming, and I've just described the 4 areas where we are focused. Obviously we can't be doing everything and we can't be active everywhere, but we try to identify some priority areas, and of course our programming is intended to complement what the Pakistani government itself and the provincial governments are doing.
So your focus is on certain provinces. I mean, there are provinces in Pakistan, Sindh, Balochistan, KPK, they are backward educationally. So are you focusing in some of these provinces, or your aid is generally for all the provinces?
Most of our development programs are for all of the provinces. As an example, the education program I referred to, the $130 million debt swap arrangement, that is nationwide, so all provinces benefit from that. I referred earlier to the campaign to eradicate polio. That those programs, which are actually implemented by UNICEF and the World Health Organization, cover the entire country. Some other projects are specific to a particular area, but much of our programming is nationwide.
When it comes to higher education, Pakistan is also doing a lot to improve the education at university level. And a lot of students are sent abroad through the Higher Education Commission to do their PhDs, masters and PhDs. Is Canada also helping Pakistan or offering scholarships for students who are pursuing higher education?
The government of Canada is not offering scholarships at that level. Difficult choices have to be made. As I said a moment ago, with the development program, you have a limited budget and you have to decide where you're going to focus it. With regard to education, our focus over the years, or in recent years at least, has been at the primary level. We've decided to focus there. But with regard to universities, I am very pleased that many Pakistani students are studying in Canada, about 4,000 according to our estimate. Some Canadian universities themselves offer scholarships to foreign students, so any Pakistani or other nationalities may apply for them. But the High Commission itself does not have a scholarship program.
In the health sector, is the eradication of polio the top priority, or you're also giving Pakistan some help in eradicating other diseases, because there are so many other diseases in Pakistan which are rampant?
Polio has been the main focus of our efforts in that regard, but I would add that Canada is a major contributor to UN programs globally that are focused on eradicating tuberculosis, malaria, HIV/AIDS. So it's not our bilateral programming, but rather through our contribution to the UN system. And it's significant amounts of money that Canada contributes, as do quite a number of other countries. Another area on the health side where we provide funding is in the area of nutrition. Something that surprised me somewhat when I arrived in Pakistan was to learn that there is significant malnutrition in the country. Apparently some 45% of children experience stunting because they're not properly nourished. I understand from the experts it doesn't necessarily mean that they're not eating enough, but they're not eating the right food.
The nutritive value of the food is very important.
That's the point. There's an international NGO based in Canada called Nutrition International, and Canada is one of the leading funders of it, which is very active in Pakistan in working with the private sector and government to insert nutritional supplements into the food supply in Pakistan with a view to addressing nutrition, which obviously is a very important part of health. A healthy child has the resilience if he or she gets malaria, for example. If they have a strong body, if they have good nutrition, their body is better able to resist diseases that they may face during their life. So I see that as an important part of the nutrition or the health equation in the country.
Thank you, Mr. High Commissioner. We'll take a short break and we'll continue this discussion. नाज़रीन एक मुख्तसर ब्रेक लेते हैं. ब्रेक से वापसी के बाद हम पाकिस्तान में कनाडा के हाई कमिश्नर से मज़ीद गुफ्तगू करेंगे. वो हमें बता रहे हैं कि कनाडा पाकिस्तान में तालीम के शोबे में मदद कर रहा है, सेहत के शोबे में कनाडा पाकिस्तान की मदद कर रहा है. ख़ास तौर पर पोलियो के ख़िलाफ़ जो मुहिम चल रही है उसमें कनाडा का बड़ा हिस्सा है. इसके अलावा कनाडा तालीम के शोबे में बहुत से तलबा को तालीम दे रहा है, वज़ाइफ भी दे रहा है, और टीचर्स की ट्रेनिंग यानी असातिज़ा की तरबियत के लिए भी कनाडा जो है वो इमदाद फराहम कर रहा है. और इसके अलावा हम वापसी पे जब ब्रेक के बाद हम मज़ीद गुफ्तगू का ये सिलसिला जारी रखेंगे और पूछेंगे पाकिस्तान कनाडा के बाहमी या दो तरफ़ा ताल्लुक़ात जो हैं कनाडा के हाई कमिश्नर से. वो हमें बता रहे हैं कि पाकिस्तान और कनाडा के बाहमी ताल्लुक़ात जो हैं उनकी नौइयत क्या, किस तरह कनाडा पाकिस्तान में मुख्तलिफ़ शोबों में पाकिस्तानी कौम की मदद कर रहा है. हाई कमिश्नर, in this day and age, it is said that economy is the name of the game. So in the field of economy and trade, what kind of relationship exists between Canada and Pakistan?
Well, I agree with you that economy and economic relations are becoming an important part of international relations and in fact in the relationship between Canada and Pakistan. I'm very encouraged to say that trade between our two countries is at a record level. Our trade in 2016 totaled about 1.4 billion Canadian dollars, which is about 100 billion Pakistani rupees. So this is higher than it's ever been in the past. But that said, I think there's potential for much more. And it's certainly one of my priorities as High Commissioner to work to try to strengthen the trade and investment relations between our two countries. I'm very optimistic on this because when I travel around Pakistan, and I do travel a lot, I travel as much as possible to meet as many people as I can and to discover the country, I see many opportunities in this country, and I see a lot of sectors in which I believe Pakistan will be growing in the years ahead, that are sectors in which Canada has a lot of expertise and experience and technology to offer. So I think there's great potential complementarity of the private sector of our two countries.
So have you been able to
together.
identify the areas where Pakistan has the potential to grow in terms of economy and in terms of production, and Canada is ready to offer its help?
Well, yes, I can certainly mention some of the areas where I see great potential in this regard. I would start with agriculture. Pakistan already has a very strong agricultural sector, but I think there's scope for much value added in terms of the agri-food industry, as we call it, the processing of agricultural products and exporting them. As an example, Pakistan produces fantastic mangoes, maybe the best mangoes in the world.
Yeah.
So it's great that you're exporting mangoes, but you should also be looking at exporting frozen mangoes, mango ice cream, mango vinegar, mango juice. And in the area of food processing, Canada has great experience. We're a big agricultural country as well. So I think there's scope in that area for collaboration. Another sector is the energy sector, which we've already touched on. I'm very encouraged to see that there are Canadian companies interested in investment opportunities in Pakistan in the area of renewable energy. Energy is an area where Pakistan needs to invest and needs to grow in order for the entire economy to grow. And Canada is a very strong country in energy. We've got companies with state-of-the-art technologies.
When it comes to renewable energy, Pakistan is also focusing to resort to renewable sources of energy. So are you ready to give help to Pakistan in producing electricity from renewable sources like sun energy, solar energy, and the wind energy?
Yes. Well, it's not so much a matter of Canada giving help. It's not part of our development cooperation program, but it's about bringing the private sector of our two countries together. What I'm trying to say is that there are many Canadian companies with expertise and in some cases with funds available to invest. that I would like to see coming to Pakistan to explore opportunities here, especially in the renewable energy. And I think solar is a great example. You have sunshine much of the year in Pakistan. So with the technologies which are getting better all the time, Canadian technologies and also from other countries as well, I think there's great potential for Pakistan to address a lot of its energy needs by exploiting, in the best sense of the
Solar
word,
energy and the wind energy.
solar and wind. In fact, there's one Canadian company in particular that is looking at a major investment in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa in the months ahead, probably around $100 million investment in solar energy there. Another area, probably longer term, is the mining sector. Pakistan has significant mineral resources, most of which have not been exploited yet. Canada is one of the leading mining countries in the world. We have a century of experience and great technologies in this sector. So in the longer term, I hope to see Canadian investment and Canadian technology in that sector. And I'll just mention one more, the ICT sector, information and communications technology. Canada is very strong in this area. The Pakistani government and the private sector are keen to adapt state-of-the-art modern information technology communications. As a matter of fact, just next week in Toronto, there's going to be a Canada-Pakistan ICT forum, and a number of business people from Pakistan are traveling to Canada to meet with Canadian companies in this field with a view to establishing relationships.
You mentioned agriculture, which is very strong in Pakistan. In agriculture sector, you have been able to identify areas where Pakistan needs Canadian help or assistance, or Canada can help improve the Pakistan's ability or potential to produce more food and better quality of food and rice and wheat and other crops.
Yes, as I was saying earlier, I think the focus is likely to be largely on the food processing, the agri-food industry, and bringing the value added. Pakistan is already an advanced agricultural country in many ways. There's good food production, but as I was saying, I think there's scope to bring greater value to that and to be exporting more. So I think that's the area where I would like to focus efforts.
The storage of these food items like wheat and rice, etc., is another problem in Pakistan. So is Canada also looking at the possibility of producing the facilities to store food for Pakistanis?
Well, that's a very good point, and that's the storage facilities is obviously an important element in developing the export of these products. At this time, I'm not aware of any particular Canadian company that's exploring that, but I think it's a very valid point, and there may very well be opportunities there.
Another area in agriculture is the water management, where many experts of international repute, they're saying that Pakistan is wasting a lot of water. And if Pakistan is able to manage this water, wastage of water, Pakistan can produce more food and can bring more areas under irrigation.
Yes. Well, I agree with your point. There may be some opportunities for Canadian companies there as well. Canada's water situation is somewhat different from Pakistan's. We're a country that's very well endowed in terms of water. I think we have something like 20% of the world's freshwater supply, whereas Pakistan is a country that has been identified as one that's very vulnerable to the impact of climate change, and a large part of the country, much of Balochistan, for example, is quite dry. So I think you're absolutely right that Pakistan has to find ways to manage better its water supply, and certainly if there are Canadian companies that have technologies to offer, I would be interested in pursuing that.
Dairy production, the products like milk and cheese, etc. Pakistan is also known for it. And have you been able to look at the prospects of cooperation between Canada and Pakistan in producing more dairy products or improve the quality of dairy products in Pakistan?
There are, in fact, some Pakistani producers who are in touch with Canadian counterparts, specifically in that area, in Punjab province, to look at Canadian technologies to increase output, especially of milk.
You also mentioned about the cooperation in the field of trade. I mean, there are prospects of expanding trade between Canada and Pakistan. So have you been able to identify areas where the trade can be further expanded?
At the present time, most of Canadian exports to Pakistan are oil seeds, canola and soya and other seeds. Most of Pakistan's exports to Canada are textiles. One of my goals is to diversify this, because I think there could be many other areas where we should be trading. So that's the challenge before us. Ultimately, it's the private sectors, for the most part, in the two countries that take decisions on what they want to import or export. So the challenge I have is to reach out to Pakistani business people and tell them about opportunities with Canada, but also I have to inform and educate the Canadian private sector about opportunities in Pakistan. And I think there are great opportunities in this country, and there will be in the years ahead.
Pakistan is also known for its certain other products like surgical instruments that Pakistan produces, and a lot of exports is taking place. And the other area is the sports goods. So are you looking at the possibility of enhancing Pakistan's exports to Canada?
Well, I'll do my best to be helpful in that regard. Ultimately, it's really my Pakistani counterparts, the Pakistani High Commission in Canada and the consulates. It's really their job to support Pakistani exporters to Canada, and my job to support Canadian exporters to Pakistan. But that said, at the High Commission, we do our best when we're approached by Pakistani business people that wish to export to Canada. We try to be as helpful as possible in terms of putting them in touch with Canadian companies that may be interested in partnerships with them or importing from them. As I said earlier, our trade now is at a record level, but it's still relatively modest.
There are a lot of chances to expand it.
I think there's a lot of scope, but it's going to take a lot of effort. Historically, Canadian business has not been present in Pakistan in a big way, simply for geographic reasons. We're on the other.
It's very distant.
It's very distant. We're on the other side of the world. Most Canadian trade tends to be with our partners in North America. We have a NAFTA free trade agreement, so there's very intense trade, about $2 billion a day with the United States. Big trade
and also
with
in
Mexico.
Europe also.
To a lesser extent with Europe. But we've seen in recent years, trade with China has increased dramatically between Canada and China. And when I look to the future, I see Pakistan as a country where I think there are great opportunities for Canadian business. So I do hope over time that we can get the word out to the Canadian private sector, encourage them to come here and explore opportunities. And we're talking about everything from trade to investment, but also partnerships like joint ventures and so forth, companies of the two countries working together for their mutual benefit.
What are the prospects of cooperation between Pakistan and Canada in the field of information technology, or this sector is very important?
Well, it is a very important sector, and as I mentioned earlier, I'm delighted that there is a seminar next week in Toronto on this. In fact, just a couple of weeks ago, I hosted a delegation from Canada, from a particular company called Novatech International, which is offering state-of-the-art ICT technology for the pharmaceutical companies. And they had very good meetings with Pakistani pharmaceuticals to explore the possibility of buying their technology. So it is an area where I think there's great scope. Canada has a lot to offer, and as I said earlier, it is an area in which Pakistan will be investing in the years ahead, both the private sector and the government, to bring its ICT standards up to international levels. Yes.
Thank you. We'll take a short break. नाज़रीन, एक मुख्तसर ब्रेक लेते हैं. ब्रेक से वापसी के बाद हम पाकिस्तान में कनाडा के हाई कमिश्नर से पाकिस्तान और कनाडा के दो तरफ़ा ताल्लुकात के हवाले से, तजारत में वुसअत के हवाले से और दोनों ममालिक में जो ताउन मौजूद है उसको फ़रोग़ देने के हवाले से मज़ीद बातचीत करेंगे। कम बैक हम बातचीत कर रहे हैं पाकिस्तान में कनाडा की हाई कमिश्नर से। There is a lot of the problem that now Pakistan and Canada both face is the issue of terrorism, and Canada is also a part of the international cooperation or international coalition which is fighting the terrorism and the phenomena of extremism and terrorism. What's your take on that? How to eliminate, how to reduce the phenomena of extremism and terrorism from various parts of the world?
Well, I would start by saying I agree with your premise. Terrorism is something that is affecting countries around the world. Pakistan in particular has struggled with terrorism in recent years. Canada to a lesser extent, but we have had terrorist incidents. But the fact that terrorism is so global means that we, the peoples of the world and the governments, the countries of the world, we have to work together as closely as possible to combat terrorism. We have to work with our neighbors, our immediate neighbors, but also with countries on the other side of the world, because the terrorist networks don't respect borders. In fact, they often exploit borders in their activities. So I think my first point is we've got to do our best to be working as close together as possible. We're in the process in Canada of exploring new ways of working together with Pakistan, capacity building and so forth. But beyond the cooperation in combating terrorism, I think we all governments around the world have to redouble our efforts, and this is a long-term undertaking, to build inclusive societies. Terrorism, for the most part, in my experience, tends to emerge when you have segments of populations that feel marginalized. People feel they have no hope.
Poverty, ignorance,
all of these things, it makes some people sadly vulnerable to extremist ideologies and ideas. So I think in countries around the world, whether it's Pakistan or Canada or any other country, we have to work to build societies that are inclusive, in which everyone feels that they are full participants of the society, that they have opportunities in their country. I think that's the only way in the longer term that we can really wrestle and overcome the temptation of extremist ideologies to some people.
So in some parts of Pakistan, like federally administered tribal area, FATA, is considered to be vulnerable to these extremist ideologies. Is your country considering to provide any kind of economic aid to develop these areas?
Well, our development program is along the lines of what I described earlier. Looking forward, we're always open in our dialogue with the Pakistani government to determine what the focus and the priorities should be of our program. But I do agree with your point that in Pakistan, as in many other countries, there really has to be a focus on economic development of parts of the country that may be marginalized or maybe left behind in terms of economic growth. It's often a challenge, especially in large countries. Inevitably, you have some parts of the country that tend to grow faster than others, but it's very important to ensure that the entire country is moving along and progressing. Otherwise, you do run the risk of people in certain parts of any country feeling alienated and marginalized.
Defense is another very important field. Is there any chance or possibility of mutual cooperation between Canada and Pakistan in the field of defense or defense technology?
We do have extensive training in Canada for Pakistani military officers. Several hundred in recent years have traveled to Canada for specific training. And a lot of this training is related to peacekeeping operations. Pakistan is one of the world's leading contributors to peacekeeping operations and the United Nations peacekeeping operations, and I think all Pakistanis should be very proud of that important contribution that Pakistan has made. It was actually a Canadian foreign minister and then prime minister who created the modern concept of peacekeeping back in the Suez crisis in the late 1950s. Lester B. Pearson was his name, and he won a Nobel Prize for that. So Canada, since way back then, has had a strong commitment both to multilateralism, but specifically to UN peacekeeping. So that's the focus of our defense cooperation at this time.
There are a lot of Pakistanis living in Canada, a large number of them. It's a big community. How do you look at the role of the Pakistani community living in Canada? Are they contributing substantially in the socio-economic development of that country?
Well, certainly our estimate is that there are about 300,000 Canadians of Pakistani heritage. That would be about 1% of our population. And Pakistan is one of the 5 leading source countries of immigrants to Canada in recent years. So it's a community that's growing. It's a very successful community, very well integrated into Canadian society. We have several members of our parliament who are either Pakistani born or the children of Pakistanis. We have Pakistani men and women who are leaders of companies, businesses, prominent figures in universities and really in all segments of society. So I'm delighted that we have this large community of Canadians of Pakistani heritage. And furthermore, I see them as great allies of mine in my efforts, as we've discussed, to promote relations between our two countries, especially trade and investment relations, because these are people who know Canada, they live there and are Canadians now, but they also know Pakistan very well, because this is the country where they were born or their parents came from Pakistan. So they're very well placed. They have their networks of contacts in both countries. They know how things work in Pakistan. They know how things work in Canada. So I think they're great allies in building the relationship.
There were reports that some companies are involved in encouraging illegal immigration to Canada, and they're using illegal tactics. So is that a challenge for you?
Well, I'm not aware of the particular reports that you're referring to, but Canada has an immigration program. We accept about 300,000 immigrants a year, which is one of the highest level related to the population of any country in the world. And as I said, Pakistan is one of the leading sources of immigrants. Those people who wish to immigrate to Canada, they can find all of the information required on the website of our immigration department, and there are procedures in place for Pakistanis or other foreigners to apply to come to Canada.
Canada has also opened its door for international immigration, like people from Syria and other parts of the world, war-hit areas, war-torn areas, also going to Canada. So will this trend continue, or you think at some stage you will put some curbs on it?
Well, you're referring to our refugee program, and I think all Canadians are very proud that Canada has opened its doors historically to large numbers of refugees. We accepted 40,000 refugees from Syria last year, and we will probably accept around the same number in the current year. So as I said, it's something that we're proud of, and it's a long-standing tradition in Canada to welcome refugees, and I'm convinced that this will continue in the future. The government is committed to refugees as a part of our immigration program, but also at the level of the general public, there's strong support for Canada continuing to receive both immigrants and refugees in particular.
थैंक यू हाई कमिश्नर। नाज़रीन, आज हमारे इस प्रोग्राम में पाकिस्तान में कनाडा के हाई कमिश्नर जनाब पैरी जॉन कॉल्डरवुड मेहमान थे। उन्होंने पाकिस्तान और कनाडा के बाहमी ताल्लुकात के हवाले से गुफ्तगू की, और उन्होंने बताया कि पाकिस्तान और कनाडा के दरमियान पिछली कई दहाइयों से ताउन के ताल्लुकात मौजूद है, और कनाडा पाकिस्तान को मुख्तलिफ़ शोबों में, इक़्तिसादी शोबे में, ज़राअत में, तालीम में, सेहत में और दूसरी ٹیکنالوجیز کے شعبہ میں پاکستان کی مدد کر رہا ہے، اور انہوں نے اس گفتگو میں بتایا کہ دونوں ملکوں کے تعلقات کو بہتر بنانے کے کیا امکانات ہیں، کس طرح پاکستان کو مستقبل میں بھی کینیڈا امداد اور تعاون جو ہے وہ فراہم کرتا رہے گا۔ اسی کے ساتھ یہ پروگرام ختم ہوتا ہے۔ جاوید صدیق کو اجازت دیجیے، خدا حافظ۔ تھینک یو کمشنر، اٹس اے پلیئر ٹاکنگ ٹو یو۔
بہت شکریہ،
شکریہ،
and
تھینک یو ویری مچ،
best regards to all your viewers.
تھینک یو ویری مچ، تھینک یو۔